LibreWolf, meaning free wolf. Negative reviews first. Consistently screws up a registry setting in either of the two locations I'm going to bring up. HKCU current user software LibreWolf and or the same one .pbak, a backup. It does this so consistently that I ended up having to delete those and also the ones located in another directory with a similar name to it that were assigned not to current user but to user and then the ID code for my current session and or my continuous session or permanent session. Next, it runs a Win Updater system tray icon you cannot automatically hide. In the same folder as LibreWolf's is the LibreWolf executable, and it seems to launch this. All it seems to be for is Win Updater, but by definition, it doesn't update. So having it show up there is a minor annoyance. Exiting it seems to do nothing negative or positive, it just does so. You're supposed to be able to create an INI file by some name and get rid of it, but the instructions don't work, whether it's portable or non-portable version, or if you make one named WinUpdater, INI, or whatever, and put in the settings, it doesn't work. It keeps running it. This is not an aberration I see in any other version of any Mozilla Firefox-derived browser. The settings file is supposed to have settings, in brackets, hide tray icon equals 1 or yes, update self equals 0 so it doesn't change its behavior, ignore CRL errors equals 1 is also suggested. Under no circumstances does this work. Another one is to put in a file that's named LibreWolf-manual updater as a renaming of the main executable for launching LibreWolf. None of these actually work. Also, it should be pointed out that it insists on putting all of the files in a subdirectory, but I am dealing with the portable version. The point is, it isn't working correctly. Before anyone yells below in the description, I'm running the version that's designed to run on my operating system, and I've tried a couple. This is an aberration or problem it has that's not a deal breaker, but it's pretty close. It locks out search engine options defaults more than Firefox because it wants to be aggressive about protecting you from something. And then it wants you to use a search engine that is not optimal. DuckDuckGo or something like that. And if you try to change your search engine, the suggestion you'll see is to go to a website called Mycroft Project, but these are user submitted, and the top responses, if you try to look up your search engine, have a 50-50 chance of being sabotaged because they have malformed instructions for doing this. Also, the button for adding manually for you to cut and paste a search engine string so that you can force it to work is disabled by default. Now, the reason for this is that a script on a website could, in theory, change your search engine over, especially if you install an add-on from a dodgy website or even a good website. It could decide to update itself later and act like it's you and just change your search engine, which is an extremely overpowered thing. You might have heard about Google and other companies paying every web browser company to make their make their search engine the default. In order to get rid of this problem, you have to go into about:config, and then you have to type in browser.urlbar.update2.engine alias refresh, and you have to create this as a Boolean or find it as a Boolean and set it to true. If you find it and it says false, you change it to true. If you don't find it, it'll offer in the browser's own editor for this function to make a Boolean. So make a Boolean and set it to true. Also, you can go to about:preferences, #search, or you can click settings, search shortcuts, and then press the now available add button, and you can set the engine to whatever you want to. An example of this would be to set the search engine and all that to aliases for Google or whatever. I just put in just the instruction, the command. And what I do is I will cut and paste the following. Now, if you want to make sure you have the least amount of interference from Google, it's still going to fuck with you. You would put in https://www.google.com/search ? And after that, you'd put in Q equals. That means query or question. And then you put in %2. That's the part of the command that says whatever you were searching for to put on the end. That will give you the AI version with all the interference you could ever want. If you don't want that, instead of that, you put in the search ? UDM equals 14 ampersand Q equals %2. They'll be listed below in the description. And now you have the ability to use Google. Other websites will do almost exactly the same thing. The way you do it is you go to a search engine, you type in a simple search, and look for its equivalent to these commands. And that's okay, but again, you're supposed to be able to go to this other website and not get a deliberately corrupted search engine's lookup. Next, about:support, or clicking help, more troubleshooting information, and then applications basic, and profile folder, and then open profile folder will let you access the directory structure within the browser or wherever it keeps its preferences. And then you can look in there for looking for search.json.mozlz4 or press.js if you want to manually edit them to erase permanently any of these other options, like I don't want Bing, for instance, let's say. The idea is to get rid of them entirely. But what you do after you've set your preferred search engine is you just unclick all of the others, and you can even uninstall all of the others. And if you hit reset to default, it's supposed to restore them, but it doesn't necessarily. The idea with this hack in the profile folder is to eliminate the options, which seems to be what's happened here originally. You can also manually put them in. You'd have to look up a good copy of those. To get Firefox to use less RAM but be more likely to crash, I mean, if you're running Firefox and it's consuming so much RAM it runs out and you're looking at a single page, you might have a system that's misconfigured and is trying to do multi-process mode and is just chewing up RAM. Or in my case, I don't care if it crashes, because it's going to crash anyway at that point. I want it to stop using too much RAM. So I'm going to put it in single thread mode or single process mode. We go into about:config, browser.tabs.remote.autostart and set it to true. We go to then look up fission.autostart and set that to false. Dom.ipc.processcount, there's two of them, and set them lower. I set it to 1. The other one is web isolated as well. Now the idea with these is that it tells Firefox to put everything into one single thread and into one process so it can crash completely rather than saying it's crashing, complaining, and crash anyway. Now if you have no problem with this and you don't need to mess with this, you can leave it alone. And why am I bringing it up considering LibreWolf? LibreWolf uses the least amount of RAM on the market, supposedly. But my modified version of Firefox, where I didn't even do this RAM restriction step, was working fine. And it was working at the same level or less. Then there's about:config, browser.bookmarks.defaultLocation. This is something that's a pain in the ass for me. I right-click or I click a button to make a bookmark, and it wants to put it under some subdirectory instead of putting it where it can get to it quickly. You can change that default location to anything like Toolbar, Menu, Unfilled, GUID, I chose Menu, and then it has a bunch of underscores or whatever next to it. The command and information will be below in the description. I also turned off Firefox Reader View that I hated. That's about:config, and then you look up reader.parse onload.enabled and set that to false. And I also removed the little down arrow that never goes away for the tab manager. That's about.config, or about:config, browser.tabs.tabmanager.enabled and set that to false. And that eliminated that little problem. Other than that, is it a decent web browser? Yes. Does it fight you tooth and nail to keep you from changing it from they totally didn't get paid to use this search engine Yes, it fights you hard. It's not acceptable. It's definitively bad behavior on their part, and I consider it borderline inexcusable. Is it an acceptable web browser? Yes. Totally okay with it. Am I going to use it? No. The little bits of annoyances it doesn't compensate for this. I imported all my bookmarks and stuff in it. I'm not going to use it as my daily driver. That's my opinion. That's it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. I'm sort of recommending it as a web browser.